But without further ado, let's just dive in. Of course, let's go to Super Wildcard Weekend, talking about some of them games. I really just want to paint the picture of how we got to the Super Bowl before I just really dive into that. So, of course, we've got to start all the way back at Super Wildcard Weekend with the Seahawks at the 49ers. Of course, if you've watched this game, the 49ers won 41-23. Brock Purdy continued his success coming from the regular season, 18 for 30 for 332 yards and 3 touchdowns. Christian McCaffrey came in and just did, 15 carries, 119 yards. And of course, their do it all guy, Deebo Samuel, 6 receptions for 133 yards and 1 touchdown. In the first half, both of these teams were very, very similar, trading punches back and forth. I honestly thought that the Seahawks might have a chance to win this game, but that all changed in the second half. Because in the second half, Seattle could just not sustain drives to save their lives. I don't know what it was, but out of the 4 times they had the ball in the second half, they fumbled once, punted once, and had 1 interception. Literally could not get anything going to the very end of the game. And, all the while, the 49ers scored every possession in the second half until the last play of the game. So, yeah, just, I don't know. The Seahawks just could not get the ball rolling in that second half, and that doomed them because the 49ers just kept their foot on the gas, kept scoring. And, of course, that Niners defense had a big part in all of this. But, in hindsight, if you're a Seattle fan, I think you got a lot to hold your hat to. You did not know going into this season that you'd be playing the 49ers in Wild Card Weekend with Geno Smith as your quarterback. So I think you've really just got to build on that and just keep your head high. I mean, of course, the 49ers, they are going to go on to play the Cowboys. We'll talk about that in a little while. But yeah, so that was the first game of Super Wild Card Weekend. Going right into the next one, probably might be the craziest game of the playoffs yet. And of course, that was the Chargers at Jaguars. Jacksonville, of course, won this game 31-30. Came back down 27-7 at halftime. Went into the half down 27-7. The reason why? Because Trevor Lawrence also went into the half having 4 interceptions. I thought this game was over. I really did. I don't know what got into Trevor in that first half. He made some good throws. I mean, 1 or 2 of those interceptions were probably his receivers could have helped him out. But for the most part, just some bad throws by him. Just a bad half. I don't know if it was maybe some playoff jitters, but definitely did not come out swinging like they thought they would. And that all changed in the second half because the Chargers really fell apart. They really fell apart in that second half. They only ran the ball 7 times in the second half. There's no reason. There's no reason to throw the ball that many times up that score. You need to use up some more of your clock. They really got too complacent with their play calling with the big lead and allowed Jacksonville to scratch and claw back in, and that's exactly what they did. I mean, offensively, they took care of the ball. Trevor did not throw any more interceptions. That's great. You quit throwing interceptions, you're going to be in football games. Who would have thought? And then they got a lot of quick points. I mean, 14-play drive that lasted 7 minutes, 5-play drive that lasted 2 minutes, 9-play drive that lasted 3 minutes, and a 10-play drive that lasted 3 minutes. They scored quickly and they took care of the ball on offense. That's exactly what needed to happen. And of course, defensively, everything just started coming together for them. They were able to get quick stops and they really limited Los Angeles' time of possession, and they just got the stops that were needed. So in the second half, they really played good complementary football together of just taking care of the ball, scoring when needed, and then the defense just getting stops. If at the end of the day, if you're a Chargers, they just do. The Chargers did what they always do, and that probably doesn't make any sense. But if you know the Chargers in years past, that is the most Charger game of all time. Having a 27-7 lead at halftime, then blowing it. That's just exactly up the Chargers' alley. I hate to say it, but it really is. I don't know, just complete collapse. You got to be disappointed if you're a Chargers fan. By now, you're probably over it, but I don't know. I'd still be a little disappointed if I was a Chargers fan, even right now. They fired their OC Joe Lombardi in the wake of the game. We'll talk about, that in a little while, but just disappointing for the Chargers and really nice for the Jaguars. But of course, they had to go and play the Chiefs in Arrowhead Stadium. We'll swing back by that in a little while. But yeah, so Chargers and Jaguars. Moving along, that was the Saturday games on Super Wildcard weekend. But the Sunday games are actually really, really good too. First game was a little odd. It was the Dolphins at Bills. The Bills won that game 34-31. To be honest with you, the Bills did not play good in this game, and I don't know if that was a little bit of foreshadowing what was going to happen the next weekend, but we're not going to talk about that yet. But let's talk about this game. But they really didn't play well. Josh Allen, 23 for 39, 352 yards, 3 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions. I don't know. Josh Allen really turned into a interception machine, and going into this game, he had a lot, and he really kept the Dolphins in this game. I mean, despite the score, the game was really, really sloppy. Bad play from both teams caused the game to be as close as it was. The Bills really should have put the game away in the first half, but the turnovers caused Miami to stay in the game. I mean, they came out of the game with 423 yards to Miami's 231. The Bills did. But, I mean, they only had the ball 3 more minutes than Miami. I mean, Allen was sacked 7 times, and of course they had the 3 turnovers. They had a fumble as well. So it's just like, I don't know. This game shouldn't have been this close. I mean, honestly, the way that they played, the Bills should have won by a landslide, but it was because of the way they played that they didn't. And like I said, we'll talk about the Bills. They would go on to play the Bengals in the next round. But I don't know. I mean, Dolphins, I don't know. You just got to find a quarterback. I mean, Skylar Thompson had a great game. Got him down to the last drive to possibly win it. It's just, you got to find a guy at quarterback. And then, of course, the Dolphins fired their defensive coordinator, and because their defense had not been the best all year, and definitely didn't help them in this game either, because the Bills really left the door open for them. They just could not go through the door. They just couldn't do it. They just couldn't beat them. So just an interesting game right there. It was a really great game, but it was because both teams played really bad, kind of. But yeah, so like I said, the Bills would go on to play the Bengals, and we'll talk about the Bengals here in a little while. But first, let's talk about the next game that happened that Sunday, and that is the Giants at Vikings. This was a crazy game because the Giants won 31-24. Yes, that's right. The Giants beat the 12-4, I believe they might have been, Vikings. The Vikings definitely were favored to win this game. But I don't know. At first glance, you're going to think, oh, what did Kirk Cousins do? He actually didn't play that bad, in my opinion. He went 31 for 39 for 273 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, he's going to get a lot of heat for the last play of that game when he threw the ball at least 3-4 yards short of the first down. But I don't think he played that bad. To be honest with you, my biggest takeaway from this game was just how good Daniel Jones played. Daniel Jones ended this game 24 for 35 for 301 yards, 2 touchdowns, 17 carries for 78 yards, an 81.2 QBR overall. And I mean, they also had big plays from Saquon Barkley as well. He had 2 touchdowns. So I don't know. I think this has more to do with the Vikings defense than it does with the Vikings offense. I think the Giants just straight up outplayed their defense, was able to keep up with the offense and just outscored them to win the game. I mean, Brian Dable literally had Daniel Jones looking like Josh Allen out there. I mean, it seemed like every time I looked up at the screen, that boy was scrambling for 5-6 yards. I was amazed. I was literally like, oh, look, Daniel Jones, he's running again. Oh, look, Daniel Jones, he's running again. It's just amazing. And you got to be disappointed if you're a Vikings fan. But then again, you got to be like, well, this is usually what we do. So, unfortunately for the Vikings, a disappointing end of the season. But good on the Giants. They of course are going to go on to play the Eagles. You probably already know what happened in that game, but we'll talk about it here in the next round. Next, we are going to talk about the last game of that Sunday slate. That was the Ravens at Bengals. Of course, the Bengals won 24-17. this was a really back and forth game the entire time. I mean, you have the quarterbacks, Tyler Huntley with 17 for 29, 228 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. That's a good stat line. Then you got Joe Cool, 209 yards and 1 touchdown. Really my biggest takeaway from this game is in football, 1 or 2 plays can make or break you. That's what I've always been told, and I have seen it live, and I've also seen it on TV in this game because that's exactly what happened. Thinking back to this game, you're going to know what I'm talking about. It was that big play that happened when the Bengals linebacker Logan Wilson forced a fumble on the goal line and was picked up and taken 98 yards by the Bengals defensive end, Sam Hubbard, for a touchdown. I think that won the game for the Bengals. Because after that, the Ravens, they had like 3 plays and a punt, 5 plays and a punt, 10 plays, and then the end of the game on a 4th and 20. It's just 1 or 2 plays can make or break you in football, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, shout out to Mike Tirico, too, as a broadcaster, hearing his call. I mean, being able to bring up that Sam Hubbard was a Cincinnati native, I loved it. I loved every bit of that. And just good for Sam Hubbard. I mean, that guy just grinds on that defensive line. Logan Wilson, he seems to be everywhere, too, as a linebacker. He's great. That's a great tandem right there they have on that defense. Just really, really good play. And it could have went either way for either team. I mean, I think that if the Ravens would have got that touchdown in, it was a little interesting on what happened with that touchdown. Tyler Huntley ended up jumping over the line, even though he had people behind him coming to push him. I remember Chris Collinsworth was not happy about that. He had all kinds of stuff saying, you do not need to leave your feet, and I get that. You really do not need to leave your feet because you have people behind you pushing, just like the Eagles usually do. So just, I don't know. It's easier said than done. I mean, of course, in person, you think you're going to be able to jump up and pull that. Cam Newton, shout out to that 2015 team that basically did that every play, like for every touchdown. But just like I said, 1 or 2 plays can make or break you. The Bengals could have easily lost that game, but they found a way to win. And then, of course, the Bengals would go on to play the Bills in the next week. But before we dig into that next week, there is one more game that we need to talk about, and that was the Monday Night Football game, Cowboys at Buccaneers. And, of course, everyone knows because it was very, very well watched. But the Cowboys won 31-14. Really dominant performance from the Cowboys. I was really impressed. And I was honestly really impressed with Dak Prescott in this game, too. I mean, Dak Prescott, 25 for 33 for 305 yards and 4 touchdowns. Then, of course, the Cowboys tight ends. And before I dig in there, I think the Cowboys tight ends are some of my as one of my favorite, overall position groups in the NFL. I don't know what it is. Just all their guys they have in their tight end group. I just love. I don't know why it is. I can't explain it. They're right up there with the Eagles offensive line for my favorite groups of play, position groups in the entire league. But they really are. But I mean, in this game, Dalton Schultz, 7 receptions, 98 yards, 2 touchdowns. And the biggest thing in this game, and I know I keep saying that for every game, but really there's always 1 or 2 things that stand out to me in every game. And what stood out to me in this game was Tom Brady. Tom Brady, 35 for 66 for 351 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And you might be thinking, that's not that bad of a stat line, but let me go back here. 35 completed passes of 66. 66 passes. That's ridiculous for a 40-something-year-old. That's crazy. He does not want to throw the ball that much. And I don't know, the Bucs just could not get going at all this game. I mean, while running 80 plays, they were only able to get 52 yards rushing, relying way too much on the arm of Tom Brady. And that's been really the Bucs' weakness all year long. They have not been able to get a running game going all year. And that's been in part of, some injuries on the offensive line. Of course, everyone's going to think of Ryan Jensen. He's a dog. I love that guy. He is a dog. At center, he is not afraid to get down and dirty to get the job done. And that's a big reason why their running game never worked this year. They also lost one of their tackles. And just Leonard Fournette just did not play like he usually does. And That's just been their problem all year, and it reared its ugly head hard in this game. And of course, because of that, the Bucs actually fired offensive coordinator Byron Leftwich. A crazy turnaround for him. I mean, from getting head coaching talks the year before to getting fired. I don't know. Just really a dominant performance from the Cowboys. Not a good showing from the Buccaneers. And, the Cowboys would go on to play the 49ers. So in the next round, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But, it might be a good time just to kind of work this in, because I was going to talk about it later, but I don't really see the difference now. But of course, everyone knows now that this was Tom Brady's last football game. That's right. In case you've been living under a rock, Tom Brady has retired from the NFL. And it's been a couple of days, so I'm not going to just dig into it too hard, but just my original thoughts was, man, I mean, it's pretty crazy that he's played this long, that he's had the success that he's had. It's easy to hate on the guy because he's been so successful, but I'm happy for him, and I hope this is it for him. It's really hard for these guys to retire because they're just so competitive, and I think that was a big reason as to why he even came back for this year, because he's just got so much competitiveness in him that he just couldn't go away from it. And, I know there's a whole lot of stuff that's happened to him this year. I don't want to get into it because, that's been, I don't want to just beat that drum. But I'm happy for him that he's actually going out on his own terms. I know that this game definitely wasn't the way he wanted to go out, but he has a lot in front of him, both at Fox and both with his family. I mean, both of his kids are, I think, teenage years now. So, I mean, they're going to be playing sports, and he gets to enjoy all that now without the hustle and bustle of being an NFL quarterback, and definitely not without the hustle and bustle of being the NFL's best quarterback. So good for Tom Brady. Good for him. And the only bad thing about him retiring is that I love Greg Olsen in the Fox booth. I think he's a great color commentator. So I was like, if there was one thing about Tom Brady retiring I didn't like, it's just that he's eventually going to have Greg's job. But come to find out, Tom Brady's going to take a year off of broadcasting. So Greg's going to have another year. So I'm really happy for him there. So it's going to be interesting to see how Fox does that. But good for Tom Brady. Glad he got to retire. And my advice to him, man, just let it be for good. Let it be for good. Enjoy the rest of your life.